How you guys doing? It is Saturday, August 8th, 2020. I hear in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode, I'm just happy, man. Champions League soccer is back. I've really kind of been waiting for this for a bit. I'm a Bayern fan, and Bayern's really kind of favorite, so I'm looking forward to seeing them winning the treble the year I actually got a chance to go out. But they didn't play yesterday. Two yesterday's games happened between Juventus and Lyon, from France. And since Lyon won the first game in Lyon, they won 1-0, and Juventus hadn't scored a single away goal. Juventus beat Lyon yesterday 2-1. Off Cristiano Ronaldo's two goals. One of them was a penalty kick. The other one was an amazing rocket off of his left foot in the top right corner. And then Memphis Depay would get a penalty shot on a pretty terrible call, if you ask me, by the referees. But I mean, hey, I'm not them. Since Juventus beat Lyon 2-1, the aggregate was 2-2. But since Lyon had one away goal and Juventus had none, Lyon got to advance, so now they're going to move to the next round, and they would go on to play the winner of Man City and Real Madrid. And going on to that game, Man City would go on to beat Real Madrid. It was really kind of a tragic game for Real Madrid because they definitely had a chance to win it, but their defensive back, Rafael Varane, who I would consider a very, very, very good, I would consider him an elite defensive back or center back. He ended up giving up both of the goals away. The first one to Raheem Sterling in the ninth minute, and the second to Gabriel Jesus in the second half. Karim Benzema would get the header for Real Madrid, but Manchester City would advance 4-2 on an aggregate. So now they will go on to play Lyon in the quarterfinals for a chance to go to the semis. And just looking at what games are going on today, my team, Bayern Munich, is going to play against Chelsea in the second leg of their match. In the previous match, Bayern Munich had taken a 3-0 lead in the aggregate after beating them in London. And also, FC Barcelona will play against Napoli in their second leg as the aggregate is tied at 1-1. Napoli has an away goal, so I mean, if they tie it up at 1-1, it could go to penalties. I have no idea how that's going to go, but it'll be a very interesting game. But with that said, I'm going to move on now to baseball, as we're really going to look forward to a lot of great soccer today, because that's what I'm going to be watching once it hits 3 o'clock. Starting out with the first game of the night, the Baltimore Orioles completely shut out the Washington Nationals, beating them 11-0. With this win, they now jump up to 6-7, and the Washington Nationals now fall to 4-6. The win would go to their starting pitcher Tommy Milone, who would shut them out through 6 innings and strike out 3. Moving on, for the Nationals, their left fielder Juan Soto would go 0-4. Not that big of a game for him. Big game for the shortstops of the Orioles, Jose Iglesias, who would have 4 hits, who go 4-for-4 on the day with 3 RBIs and a run. Big game for him, and the Orioles are now 6-7. Big win for them. Now going out to the American League East, the Tampa Bay Rays will get the only run of the game against the New York Yankees to get their 6th win of the season, as the Yankees now drop to 9-4. As it was Michael Perez who would eventually have the sacrifice fly to bring in the run, which was Yoshi Tsutsugo, that would help them win the game. And now with this, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 6-7. Moving on to probably the biggest event of the game, the Detroit Tigers scored 17 runs on the Pirates, and the Pirates scored 13 runs back on the Tigers. Not the best pitching performance, but it was the hitting performance that baseball fans most definitely needed at this time. Just great performance between both sides. And with this extra innings win, the Detroit Tigers are now 6-5, and now the Pirates are now 3-11. Moving back to the NL East, the Miami Marlins would go on to beat the New York Mets for their 7th win in their first 8 games of the season, off of a 4-run second inning and a 3-run home run by Francisco Cervelli within that inning. But yeah, with that, the Marlins are now sitting at 7-1, and the Mets now fall to 5-9 at the bottom of the National League East. Moving to the AL East, the Boston Red Sox were able to beat the Toronto Blue Jays at home 5-3. Pretty impressive game from the entire Red Sox side. And with this, They're able to get their fifth win of the season. They're now 5-8. The Blue Jays now fall to 4-7. For the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., their first baseman, would finish 1 for 2 with an RBI and 2 walks. For the Boston Red Sox, the best hitting performance of the night, I would say, goes to Alex Verdugo. He had 2 home runs yesterday, and he also robbed a home. He also robbed a home run. He had a great game on both sides. On both sides. So I'm really proud for him. Big game for him, and now the Red Sox are now 5-8. Now jumping to the AL Central, the Kansas City Royals hosted the Minnesota Twins, and they were able to beat them 3-2, and they now jump up to 5-10 as the Twins now drop to 10-4. Moving on to another AL Central matchup, as the White Sox were able to shut out the Indians at home. They shut them out 2-0. Big pitching performance from their starting pitcher, Dylan Cease, who would walk 5 batters, strike out 4, but he would still allow no runs, which is what you want at the end of the day. Big game for him. And with this, the Chicago White Sox are now 8-6, and the Indians now are 8-7. Big win for the Chicago White Sox. Now moving on to the NL Central, to the pitching performance of the day. Trevor Bauer would pick up his second win of the season for the Cincinnati Reds as he struck out 12 batters in 6 innings. 6 of his strikeouts happened in the first 2 innings, as in all 6 of his outs were strikeouts in the first 2 innings. And his ERA dropped below 1. Pretty big game for him. Nick Castellanos would finish 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs. He hit his 6th home run of the season with this win. The Reds are now 6-8. The Brewers now fall to 5-6, and Yelich would go on to hit his 3rd home run of the season, and the Brewers are kind of fallen away from where the Chicago Cubs are at the very top. Moving out to the American League West. The Texas Rangers would go on to host the Los Angeles Angels. Mike Trout would hit a home run on his birthday. Big game for him as he hit his 5th home run of the season, I believe. And the Texas Rangers, they were just too much for them. Just big win for them, and now they were sitting at 4-8. Moving on to another game in the AL West. The Oakland A's would go on to score 2 runs in the 13th inning to walk off and beat the Houston Astros, who now fall to 6-7. Marcus Semien, the Oakland A's shortstop, would be the one that would have the game-winning walk-off single to bring home his homie, to bring home Grossman for his 2nd run of the day, and the Oakland A's would find a way to get this win. I think it was the good play, the biggest play of the night, and it was a much-needed win for the Oakland A's to get a bigger lead on the AL West. And going to the NL West, the San Diego Padres were able to completely shut out the Arizona Diamondbacks at home as they beat them 3-0 off of the back of their starting pitcher, Zach Davies, who struck out 6 and only allowed 3 hits, allowing no runs, obviously, because the Arizona Diamondbacks didn't score at all. And then moving up to see what's going on, Fernando Tatis, their shortstop, would end up with he would hit a leadoff solo shot, 1 for 4. He finished with an RBI and a run for the night. Manny Machado, the third baseman, finished 0 for 3. But with this loss, the Arizona Diamondbacks fall to 5-9, and the San Diego Padres jump up to 8-6. Moving on to Colorado, as they faced off against the Seattle Mariners in Seattle. The Rockies were able to get their 10th win of the season as they were able to beat them 8-4. Big game from Charlie Blackmon as he finished 3 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. Nolan Arenado, the Rockies' elite third baseman, would finish 0 for 4, but he would finish with a walk on the day. But with this loss, I mean, the Seattle Mariners now fall to 5-10, which is putting them out of position to at least try to compete for a playoff spot. Last game of the night was the California rematch. The San Francisco Giants took on the LA Dodgers, as the Dodgers were able to put up 7 runs on them in Dodger Stadium. They were just too much, as Samardzija would allow 5 runs in his 4 innings of starting. Big game for Mookie Betts as he'd finished 2 for 4 with a double and a solo home run, his 3rd of the season. Cody Bellinger, their elite center fielder, would finish 1 for 4 with 2 runs on the day as he walked. But big win for them, and the Giants fall to 6-9, but the Dodgers now jump up to 10-4. The Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies would be postponed due to a rain delay, and the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals got postponed because more St. Louis Cardinals players got coronavirus, or were tested positive for coronavirus. And now, as I finished that, And before we look into what's going on today, just give a chance to check out the standings. First in the AL East, the New York Yankees are sitting by themselves on the top, sitting at 9-4. The Baltimore Orioles are now six, and the Tampa Bay Rays are both 6-7, 3 games behind the New York Yankees. The Boston Red Sox are now 5-8. They're a game behind the Orioles and the Rays, but they're 4 games behind the Yankees, along with the Toronto Blue Jays, who are now 4-7 on the season. Moving to the AL Central, the Minnesota Twins are now 10-4, sitting at the top of the AL Central by themselves. 2 games behind them are the 8-6 Chicago White Sox. Half a game behind the White Sox are the 6-5 Detroit Tigers and the 8-7 Cleveland Indians. And 3 games behind both those teams, sitting in dead last, 5.5 games behind the Twins, are the 5-10 Kansas City Royals. Going out to the West, the Oakland A's are leading at the top by themselves. They're 10-4. The 6-7 Houston Astros are 3.5 games behind them in second place. A game and a half behind them are the 5-9 LA Angels and the 4-8 Texas Rangers. And then half a game behind them in last place are the 5-10 Seattle Mariners, who are now 5.5 games behind the first place Oakland A's. Moving out to the NL East, the Miami Marlins have the best record in the National League East. Didn't think I'd say that for more than a few days. They've had this best record for a bit now. Behind just some amazing pitching, as Humberto Mejia would strike out 6 in his first 2.1 innings, meaning 7 of his recorded outs were strikeouts. Big pitching performance from him. Really big game that the Marlins most definitely needed. But of course, going on to the NL East, the second team is the Braves. They're a game behind the Miami Marlins, sitting at 9-5. 2.5 games behind the Braves are the 3-4 Philadelphia Phillies, who they're currently playing in this current series. I think they're going to get a back-to-back. Half a game behind them are the Washington Nationals, who are now 4-6, who are slated to play Baltimore today. And a game behind them are the New York Mets, who are sitting at 5-9, 5 full games behind the Miami Marlins. Moving out to the Central, the Chicago Cubs are by themselves. They're sitting at 10-3. 4 games behind them in second place are the 5-6 Milwaukee Brewers and the 2-3 St. Louis Cardinals. And the St. Louis Cardinals may not play for a bit, so they're going to be 2-3 for a bit. 4 or half a game behind the Cardinals are the 6-8 Cincinnati Reds, who are 4.5 games behind the Cubs, and then 3 games behind them are the 3-11 Pittsburgh Pirates, who are 7.5 games behind the first place Chicago Cubs. Last but not least, in the NL West, the Colorado Rockies are sitting by themselves at the top. They're 10-3. Half a game behind them are the 10-4 LA Dodgers. 2 games behind the Dodgers are the 8-6 San Diego Padres, who are 2.5 games behind the Rockies. 2.5 games behind them are the 6-9 San Francisco Giants, who are 5 games behind the Rockies, and half a game behind them are the 5-9 Arizona Diamondbacks, who are 5.5 games behind the first place Colorado Rockies. So that's what baseball is looking like right now. Just to give you a hint, just to give you a glance into what games are going on today. On Saturday, August 8th, Garrett Cole is going to try to look for his 4th win of the season as he faces off against Tyler Glass now at 210. Another big pitching performance to look out for. Kyle Wright trying to make a second start as he faces off against Jake Arrieta, who I believe won the Cy Young in the National League, but don't take my word for that. Additionally, Johnny Cueto is going to make his start against elite starting pitcher Clayton Kershaw, who still has yet to give up a run this year. And then Merrill Kelly is going to make his start against Chris Paddock in a very underrated starting pitching matchup as the Diamondbacks take on the Padres at 9:10 Eastern Standard Time. But with that said, I'm going to move on now to basketball. Big first game of the night happened between the Jazz and the Spurs, as the Spurs were able to beat them by 8, 119-111. For the Jazz, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell wouldn't play as they had already clinched the playoffs, and they're trying to rest them. Their big performances are coming from Jordan Clarkson, scoring 24 points off the bench in 24 minutes. For the San Antonio Spurs, Derek White was their big performer as he scored 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists to help get the San Antonio Spurs to this win. With this win, the San Antonio Spurs are now 2 games behind the 8th place Grizzlies as they're still fighting for a playoff spot. With this loss, the Jazz are still sitting half a game behind the Rockets in the 5th spot, and they're half a game ahead of the Thunder. So they're kind of wedged in there. It was a win they probably needed to get that 4th spot, but now the Rockets have full control over that 4th spot. In the West, moving out to a different game that had some big ramifications. The Memphis Grizzlies were able to beat the Thunder 121-92 in a 29-point win. Chris Paul, the Thunder elite point guard, would finish with 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, with 4 steals on the night, trying to do what he could, but the Grizzlies were too much. Dylan Brooks would score 22 points. Ja Morant, their elite point guard, would finish with 19 points and 9 assists, helping out where he can, shooting 5 for 12, 7 to 7 from the free throw line. Grayson Allen would add an 11 off the bench. Go Duke. Big win for the Grizzlies, and with this, they kind of hold on to that 8th spot for another game. They're still a game ahead of the Portland Trailblazers. With this loss, the Thunder are half a game behind the Jazz and a full game behind the Houston Rockets as they sit in 6th place, 2.5 games ahead of the Dallas Mavericks. Moving on to the next game of the night, the Sacramento Kings took on the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets won by 13, 119-106. De'Aaron Fox would score 21 points and 7 assists. Bogdan Bogdanovic would score 27 points, but he have a plus-minus of -20. Buddy Hield would score 17 off the bench in 20 minutes. But for the Nets, I mean, they would kind of go up. Karis LeVert would score 22 points and 7 assists. Joe Harris also had 21 points as a starter. With this win, With this win, the Brooklyn Nets are now sitting in the 7th spot as they are currently 2.5 games ahead of the last place Magic. Pretty big win for them as I think they are now trying to secure that spot for themselves, to try to put themselves out of reach. And in the West, the Kings are, with this loss, they're currently 3.5 games behind the 8th place Grizzlies. And if they want to have a chance to make the playoffs, they cannot lose another game for the rest of the bubble. Going out to the next game, the Orlando Magic faced off against the Philadelphia 76ers and lost 108-101. Nikola Vucevic, the Magic center, would finish with 21 points and 12 rebounds. Evan Fournier would finish with 22. But for the Sixers, pretty big game as Al Horford finished with 21 points, 9 rebounds. Tobias Harris finished with 23 points and 15 rebounds. Joel Embiid finished with 23 and 13 as well. And I mean, it was a big loss that I forgot to mention the other day, as Ben Simmons is now out for the year with a season-ending knee injury. I don't know, I forget exactly what it is. But the Sixers did kind of step up in this game. With this loss, the Orlando Magic still have the 8th spot in the East, and there's no way they're losing it. But they're still a game and a half behind the Nets. They kind of fell behind. They had a chance to go up to move ahead, but they didn't. The Sixers right now have the same record as the Pacers. The Pacers are in that 5th spot, and the Sixers are in the 6th spot. They're also currently a game behind the 4th place Miami Heat. So the Sixers are still in range to make some damage. Another game that happened last night, the New Orleans Pelicans were able to get a win, a much needed win. The Wizards were able to, as the Wizards fell, Rui Hachimura would score 23 points, the rookie. And for the New Orleans Pelicans, Drew Holiday would score 28 points. Brandon Ingram would score 17 as Zion Williamson didn't play due to rest. But it was a pretty worthwhile win. It was a big win for the Pelicans, as they currently sit 2.5 games behind the Grizzlies. They're also a half a game behind the Spurs and a game and a half behind the Trailblazers. It's really close, but it was a big win for the Pelicans, and they definitely could not have lost last night. And the last game of the night happened between the Boston Celtics and the Toronto Raptors, as the Boston Celtics were able to beat them by 22 points. Big win for them. For the Raptors, it was a well-rounded all-around performance, as no one particularly did incredibly well. Pascal Siakam, their power forward, would finish with 11 points and 2 rebounds in 12 minutes. Looking at the Celtics, Jaylen Brown would finish with 20 points. Jason Tatum, their elite forward, would finish with 18, 7, and 4, shooting 7 for 14 from the field. Gordon Hayward would also add in 9. Kemba Walker, their elite point guard, would finish with 17 points. He shoots 6 for 14 from the field. They had a really, really big game. With this loss, the Raptors are now, they're now 4.5 games ahead of the Celtics. Or my bad, 3.5 games. Sorry for my math. But they're still comfortably out of reach. But with this, the Celtics are now 3 games ahead of the Heat, which means they might be able. I think they're sitting comfortably in that 3rd spot. But that was what was going on yesterday, just to give you a glimpse into what games you can look forward to today, because it is Saturday and the bubble is wrapping up. There's three games on TNT at 1 o'clock. The Clippers played the Trailblazers as Kawhi Leonard and Paul George face off against Damian Lillard. That's a pretty big game. 3:30 game is the Jazz play the Nuggets as Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. I don't know if they're playing with their face, but Nikola Jokic looks like he might play for the Nuggets. And Michael Porter Jr. looking like he might put up a big game. The last TNT game of the night at 6 o'clock happens between the Lakers and the Pacers, as LeBron James and Anthony Davis might get some rest because they have already clinched the first spot. But bubble MVP TJ Warren might have a statement game to make against the Lakers today. We'll have to see. Sitting at 7:30, the Phoenix Suns will face off against the Miami Heat. Devin Booker looking to put on another show as the Suns still have yet to lose in the bubble. And the last game of the night is between the Bucks and the Mavericks on ESPN as Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton might rest because the Bucks recently just clinched the number one seed in the East, and I wouldn't risk that if I was Budenholzer. But I imagine the Mavericks are gonna try to play and try to fight for a little bit of a playoff spot. But considering they're a couple games out from the Thunder, I have no idea what they're gonna do. But it's gonna be a good game. And then something else big that happened yesterday, the PGA Championship yesterday. Now the current leaderboard after day two is Haotong Li as he shot 5 under yesterday to jump up from 12th place to first place. He's sitting by himself, and then there is currently a 7-way tie for second place at 6 under, as Jason Day lost the lead as he only shot 1 under yesterday to fall down and tie for second. Tommy Fleetwood would shoot 6 under yesterday to finish 6 under for the whole day as he shot even for the first day. Also sitting in there, you have Daniel Berger, Brooks Koepka, Justin Rose, and Mike Lorenzo Vera from France. But we're looking forward to a very big game today as they have made cuts of players that didn't at least shoot 1 over. So as of right now, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Phil Mickelson, Bubba Watson, Tiger Woods, the GOAT. Just names like that. They're still definitely in it, even though they're both shooting. Tiger Woods is shooting even after shooting +2 yesterday. Not his best day, but they're still in it to fight for another day. And that's kind of the best thing about golf is that you never know when someone's out of it. Tommy Fleetwood shot 6 under yesterday. Big performer. And Haotong Li right now holds the lead. We'll see if he loses it today. But yeah, I'm kind of into it. It's kind of wild now. And then moving out to hockey for their elimination games yesterday. The New York Islanders would win their series against the Florida Panthers as they won their last game 5-1. Their biggest performer was Anthony Beauvillier. Sorry if I butchered your name, as he scored 2 goals for the Islanders to send them through in 4. In their next game, the Arizona Coyotes would go on to beat the Nashville Predators in overtime, and one of many upsets in the series, but they beat them in 4. They just got really, really hot, especially led behind their goalie Darcy Kumper, who went on to save 49 shots on the day. And another big performer for them was Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who finished with 2 assists on the day to help the Coyotes get that advantage over the Predators, as they scored a goal in every single period, including overtime. Next, the Montreal Canadiens would go on and advance past the Pittsburgh Penguins as they beat them 2-0, and they now win the series 2-0 following the elite performance of their amazing goalie Carey Price, who's been doing this game in, game out, and it really shows. I think they were trying to rebuild and try to get a draft pick. This probably ruined their chances, but great game yesterday, and also there was an added goal from Arthur Lekonen. Big game for the entire club. Big game. Also, Chicago would advance as they beat the Edmonton Oilers in yet another shutout, led by their goalie Corey Crawford. He would go on to only allow 2 goals as he would still save 43 shots. Jonathan Toews, the Chicago Blackhawks captain, would finish with 2 assists on the night to help the Blackhawks advance in 4. One series that's gonna go to Game 5 is between the Maple Leafs and the Blue Jackets, as the Blue Jackets took a 3-0 lead in the third period, but the Toronto Maple Leafs would score 3 goals in the third period, including one when they had to take their goalie out. And then the Blue Jackets almost scored, by the way, but the Maple Leafs were able to tie it up in the last seconds while they were facing elimination. And then Austin Matthews would have the goal in overtime with that one goal added on to his 2 assists to give Toronto the advantage to help them push a Game 4 against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The last game of the night happened between the Canucks and the Wild, as Vancouver is going to advance past the Wild as they were able to beat them 5-4 in overtime. Their big performance came from their defenseman Chris Tanev, as he finished with a goal and 2 assists. As, like I said, they now currently advance. But so far, just to look forward to see what's happening today in hockey. The Golden Knights are going to play against the Avalanche in their round-robin game, as the Flyers are going to play the Lightning. And in terms of just series games, the only Game 5 left before the playoff starts will happen between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Toronto Maple Leafs on Sunday. So that's kind of what you have looking forward to this weekend. But with that said, I really appreciate you guys for hearing me out. I really hope you enjoy sports today. So with that said, peace out.